This is Support is Sexy, episode 80 with Rachel Tenebaum, founder of Self-Help Socialite. Welcome to the Support is Sexy podcast. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, producer, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I talk to women entrepreneurs who share their journeys and the true stories of their wins and their lessons, and give you insight and inspiration to take your business and your life to the next level. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to have you here. It just would not be the same without you. So today, I just would not be the same without this guest that we have with us, Miss Rachel Tenebaum. And Rachel is the founder of Self-Help Socialite. She also has a mastermind group called the Extraordinary Life 360 Mastermind, which I have been a member of all this year, which has been extraordinary. Lack of a better word. It's perfectly described. It is truly extraordinary. The women I have been able to meet, the women who have become friends, and being under Rachel's tutelage and leadership, and really her gentle push in the right direction toward becoming really more of who you already are. And I think that's one of the wonderful benefits, there are many, of being in a mastermind, surrounding yourself with women who are like-minded, but in a different place, in the same place, but in a different place, which works together to help you move to the next level in whatever you want to do, if that makes sense. So today I was really excited to be able to share with you Rachel's story and her journey as someone who became a life coach, how she curated her life, and her advice about being in masterminds and getting on the right path in your own life. So what Rachel talks about in this episode is how to shift your view of failure to refinement, how to give yourself permission to research your own interests and ways of being in order to determine what you really want. Also, how to handle the pressure of needing to have job security, which we always hear about, which isn't an actual thing anymore in this world. The power of shifting your network, how to get over the fear of being seen, I thought was very interesting. The importance of space, which is something that I talk about a lot on the podcast. And I actually that message was driven home to me with working with Rachel, this idea of putting space around things. So you'll hear more about what we mean in this episode. And lastly, 3 tips for determining whether you're on the right path, which is a question we ask ourselves all the time, right? If not all the time, certainly sometimes. So Rachel talks about some tips for scratching the surface there and figuring out if you're on the right path. So I know you're going to enjoy this episode. Thank you so much for listening, as always. And be sure to check out supportissexypodcast.com for other episodes with other fabulous women that I've interviewed. I counted the other day. I've interviewed more than 60 so far. It is amazing. So have a listen there. But right now, enjoy Rachel and her story. So without further ado, Rachel Tenebaum. So Rachel, thank you so much for joining me for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to have you here.
Yay, Elayne! Yay. I'm so excited.
Excellent. Now I have to ask you, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
That's a good question. I don't think anybody asked me that. Mm-hmm. Probably right out of college, and my father bought a closet company, and I wanted to go into international affairs, and he was like, what kind of money can you make in that? He's like, come work for me and run this company. And so I did that, and I just loved the freedom, the artistic process of like creation of, renovation, if you will. My father's in commercial renovation, and so it was like taking a business from a certain place and taking it to the next level. And what was possible in like that entire process.
Were you resistant at all to going that route instead of international studies as you were interested in at first?
Oh, absolutely. Like I totally regretted. I was like, I should have done an international MBA, and instead I started doing a master's in teaching French. But I was grateful, like at the time, I don't think there's anywhere else I could have been.
Now, what was it like working with your dad or for your dad's company? Was it a closet, you said renovation?
Closet design company.
Okay. So what was it like in going into the business? the family business?
Well, I was really lucky because it was really a side business from the main business. So I really, at a very young age, had the opportunity to be running the show. I was working with the former owner, and so he was the one that was training me. So I really was gifted a lot of autonomy. And so at the beginning, for sure, and like as we grew and I had built my own team, it was great because there was that space. We weren't really working in the same business. We were just side by side.
Now, where did you grow up?
I grew up in New Jersey, South Orange, and then Livingston.
South Orange. What was a young Rachel like in South Orange, New Jersey?
Oh my God. Little wild woman. They called me Chatty Cathy when I was 4.
They did.
I was hanging with the adults from like a very young age. I thought I was more of a wild woman, but recently that bubble has been burst. My mom said I was very chatty, but my dad said I was like kind of quiet, which that's a lot of my work now with women. So that's a whole nother story of, how we think we are and how we really are and all of those things.
What's that about? Is that something that, was there a part of you that wanted to be the wild one, or is there a part of you that wants to be the wild woman, or is it just one part of who you are?
No, I think it's just like the pressure that was, I felt self-identified as an extrovert, and I don't really feel like there was space given to how much I was actually more on the introverted, highly sensitive side, and needed probably a lot more time to myself and for internal reflection and all of that. And that felt like it was bad. And so it wasn't until my late 20s, well, really early 30s, that I started to see like, wait a minute, I actually need a lot more space. And this has nothing to do with anything except for energy. And so it's just interesting to look back at how I thought I was versus maybe what other people saw.
How do you feel you are now? Do you feel like you kind of have both sides, or what energy do you take to more now as an adult?
I really feel like it's 50-50. I think people would identify me probably as an extrovert, or they think I'm out there, but that's like the secret of it all, because I'm usually with like one person or maybe like 2 max, and then retreating, or I'll be at an event and just having like maybe one deep conversation and the rest is just hellos. So I've really mastered how to navigate creating intimacy, creating connection, and being part of the world, but with a way that protects my energy and, time, I guess.
How do you feel like, you mentioned it, working with some of the women that you work with as a life coach, how do you help them through that process of seeing themselves for who they are, giving themselves permission, even one thing, seeing yourself, but then giving yourself permission to really be, for example, the introvert, and then know how to navigate that, like you said, so your conversations will be more intimate with people as opposed to, being the person on the stage, keeping the crowd going kind of thing?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the first step is usually in just asking questions and challenging the assumptions that we have about ourselves, or that we've been told about ourselves, or what we think our life should be like, or who we are supposed to be, and actually like doing a little bit of investigation to say, is that actually what I believe? Is that actually feel like, and it's in alignment with me, and is it actually even what I want? And so I think the first step is just being in a questioning process, and being the ultimate observer of your life, like without judgment, but just starting to take it back a step, to be the witness.
Yeah, I think without judgment, like you said, is so key, because we can observe our lives, but then, as you said, make some judgment on it and then not do the thing that is actually really who we are.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that's why, my process and what I believe in, what I practice and what I teach is baby steps. And so a lot of times the women that I work with, they're visionaries and they are powerhouses. And so there's that tendency to kind of fast track to the finish line. And in the process, they get sidelined. Like, they forget who they are, or they lose sight of who they are, or what they want, or what they even started it all for. And so part of that process is also just like slowing everything down and breaking it into bite-sized pieces on a day-to-day basis. So for example, like with the introvert extrovert process, it's like, going to a party and then saying like, how did you feel afterwards? And is there a way to sort of tweak the way we show up at that event? And then what happens like before the event and after the event? So it's also really like this, I say curate your life, but it's really finite intention and planning around everyday experiences as well. So that is then allowing you to be the researcher without judgment that says, wow, when I spent the day working from home and then went to the event and then came home and planned nothing the next morning, that felt great. But when I did the meetings back to back and then went to the event and then went to the conference the next day, that was too much. And so once we start to just be in that inquiry process where we're just sort of almost collecting data and modifying, then we also can start to get comfortable with even being in a process that sometimes has failure and sometimes has adjustments that need to be made.
Right. So it's like I love that that's like you're trying things out to see what works as opposed to saying, this is who I am, this is how I am, this is how I've always done it kind of things. Like you give people the tools and the freedom to be able to experiment is really what it is.
Exactly. And going back to entrepreneurship, there's so much pressure in getting it right the first time,
right,
which is a complete contradiction of what entrepreneurship is. So, but that's like the myth. That's where we're misguided to feel like it is a slam dunk. I mean, because post some of my entrepreneurship, I worked, in a $20 million company. And so when we're, the women I work with, a lot of them coming from large scale corporations or businesses, we are used to having the slam dunk. And that's because we have the master budget behind us and we have the huge team and we have the infrastructure. And without that, or if it's just us, we have to get comfortable with this experimentation process, with this baby step process, with this...
with the failures, as you mentioned.
Exactly,
right.
Exactly. And seeing it as just sort of a refinement instead of a failure. And, the best place to learn that is on ourselves. And then we can apply that to any business or career or relationship or any other area of our life.
What would you say were some of the greatest influences for you growing up before you got into this career of being a life coach, mastermind leader, all of the wonderful things that you do now?
One of the biggest things was, since a very young age, my father took us on trips and really instilled in us and my mother the importance of enjoying life, no matter where you are, no matter what your budget might be, if that's, driving an hour away to, an inexpensive hotel and going to a museum and a fair, craft fair or something like that, or whether that's like, later on in life when we were able to go to do a master tour of Italy where my father was born and, do a whole research in that, whatever it is, just the importance of really enjoying life, which is ultimately what I'm actually helping women to do. It's like never really about the business
right.
or the anything. It's really about just giving them permission to enjoy their life wherever they are.
Now, how did you go from, as you mentioned, you worked in the family company or the other business, a closet company, and then moved into working with a $20 million a year company or a big company, and then moved into this work that's very much more personal and one-on-one with people. How did you make that transition through those different phases of your life?
One of the things to just kind of connect the dots from when I was younger was I just really loved travel, and I loved going to new places and learning about people. And I also loved deep connection with people that had like a kindred spirit to me. So I had this collection of really fabulous people around the world. And so this concept of, bringing people together, real conversations, was always something that I was really passionate about. That said, everyone, the women in my family are all teachers. So as I said, I did the master's degree to teach French. And what to do when you're done but teach, right? So I did that and I taught middle school. I loved my students. I took my students to France. then I just still had that calling. Like there was something more. I'm just a serial grower. I love to grow and explore and expand. And um, I felt like there was no more for me. I didn't want to go into supervision. I didn't want to be a guidance counselor. So I spent like 6 months really getting curious. What did I actually want? Not what was handed to me, not what's supposed to be, but what did I want? And I had to really move beyond like this put upon, but also I will take responsibility, just this pressure that I felt for myself that like I had this great job, I had tenure, like it's like in my own little, they were my own little golden handcuffs. They might not be, some people might relate with a bigger salary, but for me it was like the amount of pressure in my family, like job security, and this is amazing, and what are you doing, and da da da, was really a humongous barrier for me to break free from. So I started to shift my network so that my energetics could actually change. And I started becoming involved with international organizations in New York. I gradually started moving towards New York. And so I started shifting my social circle so that it almost felt more normal to say, wait, maybe there's something beyond, this, and what could there be? And so I went on a quest again of exploration. And I researched everything I had ever dreamed about: the UN, French wine companies, the French Institute. I had studied in Paris during college, so for me that was like a big hotspot. My mother's Israeli, so I also looked in the Jewish world, and I started connecting the dots between study abroad and culture and international affairs. And I just Googled like the most unrelated words that were something to me. And through that process, I found this company that really like had so much of what I had been looking for. That was it. Like I showed up, they were like, "Where did you come from?" It was a perfect match for what we both wanted, and helped them to grow the sales team and develop infrastructure, and a lot of different things happened there.
What was it about that company that drew? I love this idea of, like you said, just going and plugging in words that meant something to you without necessarily, because sometimes we feel like we have to, I know I'm like this, you have to know the answer before you even do the research, which doesn't make, which is backwards. You're doing the research in order to find the answer in
Exactly.
almost every case. But what was it that made you say, okay, then this is it, at least, at that point with this company?
So for me, my father's born in Italy. My grandparents were Holocaust survivors. My mother's born in Israel. My other grandparents were also survivors from Romania. So I had this like eclectic cultural background, and the company, plus my passion for study abroad, and the company was selling, tours, luxury tours that were educational and cultural, to go overseas to Jewish heritage destinations. So it just felt like it was almost like this perfect combination. Like so many people are like, how did you find a company that is basically your essence? I was like, I was just, bullseye and score. Like I went beyond the traditional buckets of what I thought was possible. And plus it was like somewhat of a family company. So there was like that familiarity from when I was at the closet company, of sort of a smaller company that was up to big things. There was a travel component, culture component, business component, everything I loved from the closet company of building sales and relationships. But now the conversations would be about, passions and community and all these things that I loved. And so it was just a no-brainer. And we were both an immediate match. And that's what I teach. And that's where that, how Self-Help Socialite sort of evolved from there, is because I saw what was possible through, connecting the dots in this very unique way that I didn't realize was unique, that I sort of gave myself permission to reinvent myself over and over again. Through my time at the travel company, I became a self-expression and leadership coach. I was doing a lot of personal growth work to see, like, I was up against identity, right? Now I was like living on Park Avenue. All these things were starting to shift, and I was almost like not identifying with myself, even though it was who my essence is. There's that who I'm supposed to be, and it was sort of off. So that's when like personal growth work really shifted things for me internally and professionally. And
How long had you been with how long did you teach, and then how long were you at the travel company before you started having these feelings of this isn't exactly it?
I taught for 3 years. Um, it was only like probably my 6 months, not even, at the travel company, and I was reading a Dale Carnegie book, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Mm-hmm.
And my boss was like, well, if you like that, then we have something for you. And at the time, I was so shy and embarrassed that I felt like, oh God, they found my book. It took me 3 months to email him to say, what was that thing you were talking about?
Interesting.
And that led me to this course and this program, and I had no idea what I was in for. I thought it was a communication course, and it turned out to be personal transformation work. And then it just took off, because then I started meeting. I met Nisha Moodley. She led me to Marie Forleo. And it was actually through working with Marie one-on-one that she helped me see that it was actually a lot of my personal blocks that were blocking me in my business and career. And it was a really hard pill to swallow. But then I really even went deeper in some of that personal work and started to see how it's really the case for everybody. When we shift from the inside, then things shift on the outside. So at least that's what I believe. So they were sort of happening simultaneously. That I was at that company for 8 years. It was some of the best years of my life. I really loved every minute of it. And again, like I said, like I'm a serial grower. So once I hit a place where I felt complete, I grew a sales team. We had a lot of successes. And so many women were coming up to me asking me, who should they work with? What should they do? How do they make friends? How do they get support? And it just sort of evolved, and it felt like time to create something new.
And how did you know that when it was that thing? I always ask people just how did you get to the point where you said, or maybe it was a process for you because you tend to seem to go through the process to sort of realize things. But how did you get to the point where you said, you know what, being a coach or your company, Self-Help Socialite, and the things you do with events and that kind of thing, when did it become real for you that this is what you're supposed to do?
Again, yeah, it's a process. And I knew so many successful women that I knew that were my close friends, that I knew the behind the scenes, and I knew so many people were glamorizing them. And I knew that it all, like the people that I was surrounding myself with were 5 years into it in their success. And so part of
into coaching,
okay, into entrepreneurship, into whatever the business was.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to create a safe space for people to be in that like 1 to 5 year place where it was like daunting. And there was this belief that you should just go from 1 to 5, like pop out of, I don't know, a microwave. And it doesn't work that way, So that's part of it. And it was actually started as Rachel Recommends. And I had an entire website, and I was going to make all these recommendations, and like, there was going to be different things because, and then I had it almost ready to go. And then, because of one person's comment of like, well, who's Rachel? I got shut down. Again, the personal stuff, right? Always showing up, and like, okay, like that person was just asking a question, but I got so shut down by that.
Do you think it was something in you that was thinking, well, who's Rachel to do this kind of thing, that may have triggered something? Or what was it that made it really hit you that hard, do you think?
I think it was the fear of what other people think.
Mm-hmm.
And so she mentioned some men in our industry, and I was like, oh, like it was almost like the fear rather of being seen in like that expectation that I was supposed to already be like Angie's List or something like that.
Right.
Like so far ahead when like I was still figuring it out. So I think it was really more about like, I just wanted it. I forgot about the fact that when I was in creation mode, there was like people on the other side that would see it and ask questions. And then I was like, I don't want anyone to say anything. And then 6 months later, and it was all the right timing, because there was more work I needed to do on myself and in my job and all of those things. And I kind of pulled it back. And the following summer, Sarah Jenks, actually a friend of mine and coach and online personality, she had called me the self-help socialite because she's like, you're everywhere and you're having conversations about personal growth. So that's who you are. And so, I just went with it. And it really started to be a Yelp of self-help. My intention was it for be this big playground and store and online platform. And the event sort of came out of, like, I know how to do people and in-person and events. So it just sort of happened that people wanted to have that in-person connection. Then they wanted to mastermind with me. They wanted to work with me. And so it was sort of an evolution of saying, like, hey, I'm going to just continue to follow the breadcrumbs and connect the dots to see where I'm guided. That's how it happened.
I love that. Now, do you think that that's something that more of us, especially as women entrepreneurs, should be open to doing? In other words, following the breadcrumbs. I love that phrase that you use. Instead of, again, this idea of we need to know exactly what it's going to be before we start out. Because it seemed like you had a concrete idea of what you wanted it to be when you first started. You pulled it back, and then that's when it really began to blossom, when you were sort of open to see what might develop.
Yeah, I think you have to get honest with your personality type, because I have many friends who, God bless them, they're very linear and they're very driven and they're very like, you have to also know what the purpose of your business is. For me and a lot of the women that I work with, a lot of the path of the business is that they are deeply committed to their expansion and to showing up in the world as who they want to be. And if that's the case, then the first step is allowing yourself to be in your own process. So, if you're trying to build like a multi-million-dollar company, I'm probably not the person to ask for advice unless you already have $1 million and then I'll help you scale it. Then I can absolutely do that. But most of the women that I know that kind of are trying to birth like this passion business, so much of it usually has to do with their own self-expression. And so if that's the case, then I deeply believe that allowing your own creative process to exist is essential. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. And what do you think for you as a coach and someone who leads people, especially working with women, what makes a really good coach, I guess? Because I know so many people, I shouldn't say so many, a lot of people that I know are going into the space of being a coach or teaching and that kind of thing. But what do you think makes you a really good coach? And then in general, some of the people that you've worked with as a student, what has been really great for you?
The biggest thing that I would say is every coach that I've worked with, except for maybe one deviation where I probably made a mistake, but for the most part, I've been pretty on point with who I selected. And for me, and this is also probably just part of my journey, the most impactful coaches have been women that I wanted to, there was a part of their essence that I wanted to embody. So as much as Marie is a fabulous businesswoman and marketer, I really found that I was most impacted by her essence of as a woman, I wanted to be someone who was fierce and organized and unafraid to state her opinions and professional. And there was just a way of being that she had, a femininity and a fierceness that I loved. And Nisha Moodley had sort of a soft side and a nurturing side and this way of giving permission and freedom at the core and sisterhood. And Jen Groover really just is a go-getter, and she still also has managed to hold her femininity in that fierceness and her big vision and does things her own way. And Regina Thomashower, right? Just embodying sensuality and teaching women a new way of relating to what does feminine leadership look like, and how do we manage that plus being in relationship. And so it really, for me, I think a good coach is somebody who walks their talk, and is always in the inquiry and is always, if you pull the curtain, it's kind of the same person. You see their flaws on the outside, or at least when you're working with them. I'm very transparent with my clients about where I'm at. maybe not as much so with the entire internet, right? But
Right.
but I think that that's what makes me a good coach, because I am real and
Mm-hmm.
down to earth and not afraid to let people know if I don't have the answers. Um, and I encourage women to find their own answers. I think that's what makes a really good coach, is to be the ultimate mirror, that shows each of us how we actually already possess that thing we're seeing in the other person. We just maybe haven't materialized it in the fullest capacity, because we wouldn't be drawn to that person if we didn't already have part of that in us.
Something we see in ourselves, right? I think what you said too is so important about being transparent in in ways that are healthy, especially with your clients or people that you work with, because for the people who are listening who are coaches, this idea of having to be perfect is not what it's all about. In order to teach people, you can teach people, I think, you let me know what you think, through your experiences as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and experiences even when things go wrong, so to speak.
Totally. Totally. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Now, one of the things I learned from you is the importance of space. I actually talk about it a lot now, but I definitely learned. So everyone knows, Rachel is my coach. I've worked with her all year. She's fantastic, been just amazing. And as I said, learning about putting space around decisions and to-dos or whatever it is something I really took on from you. So why is that important? Tell us why space in many ways, in its different ways, is important.
I think because space takes the pressure off and allows us, the program is the 360, program, Extraordinary Life 360, and it's really about like taking that wider lens. And sometimes we can get so caught up in the moment that we're just going. And we almost need to, like, as we become that observer of ourselves, stepping back and taking space creates room for things to marinate. And for me, at least, I know that it wasn't a natural process. It was something that I had to, like, it is everything. There's the duality of everything, right? It kind of was for me, but then it also wasn't, right? Especially when we have impatience and we have vision and we're like, I need it now.
It takes practice for sure.
Exactly. So with taking that space, all of a sudden, that's what I guess I loved about travel so much, is that like all of a sudden creativity can blossom. We can see things in a new way. We can get a different idea. There can be light can get in. And it also energetically calms our nervous system down to the point that, we're more relaxed. And when we're in that relaxed, more powerful state, we're then going to create from a completely different place rather than just what we think we should be doing or what sounds like a good idea.
Right. And in speaking of space, we mean, so it could be time, it could be distance, it could be just something around your wellness. There's a lot of ways to create quote unquote space.
Yeah. And that's actually, so from a different perspective, the main reason that I started with space was, I guess, having really fierce boundaries. And part of that is if we want to be able to hear our own voice and be the ultimate magnet, because people, there's so many things we could talk about with space. Like, it just depends. Like you said, there's, time or projects or whatever.
Right.
But people would ask me, right, like how do I connect with so many different people? And part of that has to do with being in my highest vibration. And I can only be in my highest vibration space to take care of myself and to go within and to make sure I'm meditating and journaling. And of course, it's not always a perfect process. And sometimes then, especially this fall, I've been like, going. I'm like, whoa, like just today I said to a friend, I'm like, my goddess is like, girl, where's my space? Like, where's my space?
Right.
And so it's not a perfect system, but it just allows us to tap into ourselves. And when we're tap into ourselves, back to what's a good coach or what are the people that I wanted, we're just in our pure essence. And when we're in that space, we can be present. And then like, we could talk about this for hours, but anyway, like that's really why I believe it's so important. So we can hear our own voice and show up as our truth rather than what everybody, all the other stimulations say we are, should be, or any of that.
It's almost like clearing the clutter so that you can really see what's there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I love that. Now, what about masterminds? What do you feel is so special about masterminds? We've been hearing a lot more about them now, and I think especially for women entrepreneurs and creatives, they're incredibly important and resourceful. But what are masterminds, and why do you feel they're helpful?
So, like I said, my first experience of a mastermind was with Marie Forleo, and that was like a 9-month, 10-month experience with 21 other really powerful women. And what I really loved about that, which is what inspired my mastermind program, is that the women were equal parts like sisters and equal parts entrepreneurs. And so there was always this element of we are women first, we're people first, we have feelings first, and we're also passionate about business. And so where does that meet, right? So that we could bring our full self to the table. So that's one thing, is like, so masterminding is like a place where you can get support around your business, your ideas, and take them really to the next level in a faster way than we could do on our own. Right? Like I said, I like growth. So I really like things that create expansion in a faster container. I also believe in containers. I've learned that every time I've been in a coaching program, and I do believe in also finding your own flow and creating your container, which I help women to create their own structure for themselves. But I know that as a wildly creative and passionate about life person, if you will, having a container allows me freedom, because then I feel more grounded. And so,
And by container, you mean a group to be involved in, or what do you
I
mean
mean
by
a
container?
group, I mean anchors, I mean like, okay, I'm starting, we're starting February 15th until November 15th. It gives us a structure to what we're working on. It gives us a definition around, this isn't like, I don't have to worry about the next 10 years. I just have to focus on the next 9 to 10 months. It breaks us down, like, we do like the weekly calls and like just, one-on-one versus group versus all these things, so that people have structure and accountability to feel really held through the process, which can be really scary and daunting. The other thing is that for me and for the women in my mastermind is it really shifts, I believe, your vibration and your energetics, especially because we're tribal people. So at the time, like I said, I was surrounded by teachers, which is, I consider myself a teacher now, just in a different capacity. And so I felt very separate. I felt like a black sheep. I felt like, well, I love business and I don't fit in, and I want to live in the city, and I want to travel, and I want, this beautiful, like, different life than most of the people in my network. And so putting myself intimately with 10 or 20 other women who were up to that same conversation, it makes us feel safe, and it makes us feel normal. And there's also that component that then, like, I was able to go back into my other communities or environments and feel like I had my people, and then I could show up here and I could show up there, and we don't feel so alone.
It was sort of going back to what you said earlier, something I wrote down, the power of shifting your network. It's sort of making, and by doing that, or the way to do that, one way is to get around different people, basically.
Exactly. And that's not to put down any other people.
No, exactly.
It's just to raise our vibration and to be with like-minded people, so that then when we might feel very unique or different, we then realize, like, okay, she's also scared and she's also going for it. So like, I can be scared and going for it too. And like, that's okay. And so, that's why I think it's really important, and it pushes you forward,
Right, exactly. There's not an excuse of, oh no, that's not possible, because you sort of see it, and at least that was my experience in being in your mastermind. You see it in other women who are doing it afraid, so to speak.
Right.
Yes, excellent. Now your mastermind is called 360 Extraordinary.
Yeah. Extraordinary Life 360.
Extraordinary Life 360. I'll have links to everything, but just in case anybody wants to look it up and see it. Now, if there's one thing you wish someone would have told you about entrepreneurship, what would it be?
Don't glamorize it.
In what ways do you think it's glamorized? I agree, but in what ways today do you think it's so glamorized?
I think that I believe that one of the most important things we can do in life is live our truth and live in alignment. And that can take many shapes. That can be, if you have a passion for medicine, maybe your truth is to be a doctor. It can be to be an artist. It can be to be the CEO of a humongous company that you're super passionate about. It can be to be a teacher. And entrepreneurship is just another way to follow your truth. And so I think that sometimes the confines of business can feel so stifling that the only way to freedom feels like it is entrepreneurship. And then people get over there and realize that there's still a lack of freedom because it's all a mindset of how do you create freedom for yourself. And so if you feel deeply called by a mission, an agenda, to step into your leadership, whatever that is, then do it. But don't do it because it's trendy. Don't do it because it's going to somehow be easy. Don't do it because you're going to have like $1 million in 6 months. Do it because it's your calling. And then stop doing it if it isn't anymore, right? I'm a radical believer in reinvention. And so sometimes it's the gateway to something else. I know a lot of people that started a business and then as a result of that experience led them to another company that was a perfect fit. And so I think if we're always in that inquiry back to where we started from and just questioning, is this still my truth? Does this still feel aligned? Is this still like lighting me up? And am I still my biggest contribution to the world from this space? The answer is yes, then keep going. And if not, it's okay to reroute and change course, you know?
Yeah, I think that's so powerful because, as you said, sometimes we get on this path and think that we have to keep going down it because, well, that's where we started, or this is the business that I launched, so I have to stay in this forever. It's actually interesting. One of the quotes, I love to pull quotes from people that I saw on your Instagram. A quote you had said, "Don't settle, don't finish crappy books. If you don't like the menu, leave the restaurant." I love that one. "If you're not on the right path, get off it." So I was going to ask you, how do we give ourselves permission to do that, to get off a path that no longer is right for us? But you sort of just spoke to that.
Well, and there's more to that, which is whether you're in a mastermind or have a support network. It's also so important to then have that process where, without going overly down the rabbit hole, but where we can be in a research of, is this fear? Am I looking at this the wrong way? Do I need some support from somebody because I'm just getting paralyzed by that like mini failure or setback? Or is this no longer serving me? And so the main thing is like, we don't want to be hasty, but we also don't want to stay around if it's past time. So I say that I feel very lucky to have worked very hard to get to a place where I can identify which is which. But for a lot of people listening, like if you're not sure yet, give yourself, like, okay, I'm going to take the next 30 days to really like investigate this, or, maximum maybe 90 days or something like that. And put a plan in place so that you're not just trigger happy and just like, throwing something in the garbage, when part of entrepreneurship is also getting comfortable with that redefinement. And, maybe before you just rush to totally throw it out, but also at the same time knowing when it's time for an evolution or change or, so it's kind of both. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's complex.
Yeah, no, if you could give us, I'll put you on the spot, if just some homework for people. If there were, say, if someone's in that phase where they're trying to figure out, is this the path? Is it not? Am I interested in, perhaps some other things? If there were 3 things that you would say, this will be your assignment to go get you started, not to figure the whole thing out, get you started on that path of figuring it out and doing the research, what would you say?
And this is if they want to see if they should shut their business down, or
no, to see if they are on the right path, or if they're in the space where, like you said, sometimes it's just you've met some kind of failure or setback and you're questioning yourself, or it's the other side of it and this really isn't your thing anymore.
Okay, got it. So the first thing that I would do is make a list of what you think something else would give you. So that you can start to examine, like, is something just maybe off in your personal life? For example, maybe you're not getting enough sleep. Maybe you want to book another vacation. Maybe you just want some more friends, because sometimes we think that something better will give us that. And so just start by coloring your life with more things that bring you joy, so that you could bring whatever the work is you're doing into perspective. The second thing is spend time with people that are your mentors or that you admire, or visit businesses that you are curious about. So if you're feeling like unfulfilled, maybe go to some varied places and just do some research to see how it feels to even be in a different environment, or if there's something with your own business or career, to get some insight on a way to advance or shift what you're doing. And then the third thing is to do, just close your eyes and do a gentle meditation and think about, in 5 years from now, if this is where I am, will I be happy? And, if the answer is like a halting no, then that's a definite sign to switch directions. And I believe that can be a gentle process, which is some of the coaching that I do with people, which is to take maybe what might seem like an eclectic background and say, how do we build on this? So it's not, throwing away your expertise, but maybe find like a different career and a different business path that can just build on what you've started. And if you see it in the future, then keep going. I mean, I don't know if that gives you enough place to start, but
yeah, no, that's good. That gets people, that cracks the surface. Now, if you think over your life and career, and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be, and what would you say?
Say that again.
If you think over your life and your career and had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be, and what would you say?
I don't know if I could pick just one person.
You can pick more than one. I'll let you cheat.
I'll pick 3.
Okay.
The first would be Nisha Moodley. I want to thank her for giving me permission to follow my truth and to commit to a life of freedom, no matter what that looks like. I would thank Guy Milo, my former CEO, who really showed me what life could be, and how presence and having fun in business was really critical component to success and joy. And I would thank Jen Groover for teaching me that a woman can also be a multimillionaire and, could use her superpowers to build a business to stay in that zone of genius, while also still being abundant and generous with their time and relationships and love.
Excellent. That's a good 3. That was worth it. So final question, how can we support you? Tell everyone, again, your website, social media, anything that you're excited about right now. I'll have links to everything, but I just want everyone to be able to hear it too.
Sure. So one thing, this is such a layered topic. I would invite people, if you want to set up, I do 20-minute breakthrough sessions with people. You can set those up at bit.ly/SHS, all caps, lowercase chat. Hop on my calendar while I still have some spaces available. And And you can check out selfhelpsocialite.com. The mastermind is at extraordinarylife360.com. Right now it's on the wait list, but you can hop on the list and we'll get you information as soon as that comes out. We're also going to be rolling out a network level for women so that if people want to get involved in different ways, we can have that available for people. And we have a 3-part series that's going to be coming up to shift your mindset and hone your vision and align your year, December, January, and February at Hub 17. So I will get you that information as soon as it is available. And I look forward to, hearing from everybody, their stories of reinvention, their pursuits of freedom. And
where can we find you on social media?
You can find me on Instagram at Self-Help Socialite or Rachel Tenenbaum. Personal, I'm on there too. They can see my some different stuff and my nieces and stuff like that. And on Facebook, those are the two. I'm not really a Twitter person, so.
Excellent. Great. Rachel, thank you so much for everything, but certainly for your time today. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. And I want to celebrate for everybody listening. It's Elayne's commitment. And I'm so impressed and delighted at your creation of Support is Sexy and everything that you're birthing in the world. So thank you for being you.
So much. Lastly, before you go, what's a last word from you, a parting piece of advice for our listeners?
Remember to have fun.
Remember to have fun. I love that. Rachel, thank you so much. Hold on one second.
Okay.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Thank you so much for listening. What you can do now is go over to supportissexypodcast.com to find other episodes with other inspiring women entrepreneurs that I've interviewed in the past. Check them out there. And while you're there, please also make sure that you subscribe to my email list so that you don't miss an episode. You don't miss any of the great resources that I share with people. I won't spam your inbox, only the good stuff. So be sure to go to supportissexypodcast.com, click on subscribe at the top and sign up for our email list. And until next time, you know what to do. Go out there and create something sexy. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.